Four of you are essentially the custodians of Wallace and Gromit. It's been a long time since we've seen them on the big screen. You decide very selectively how and where they show up in the world. Why did you sort of finally decide to let us have another full-length adventure with these guys? You've been kind of keeping them stingily under lock and key.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's all about the idea at Aardman. We always wait for that idea, no matter how long it takes to that lightning strike kind of idea. But actually, this one did start as something else. Around the time of Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it was in the back of my head, just this idea that, what if Wallace invented a smart gnome or a robot gnome to help Gromit with his garden chores? Very well-meaning, and played around with that idea on and off for a few years. And it was going to be great fun, and it was for a 30-minute short. But then every time I pitched it at Aardman, there was something slightly missing, and that sort of villainous element and a motivation that was clear, but also very personal. And that's where Feathers McGraw kind of answered all those questions. And then when Merlin came on board and Mark Burton, the screenwriter, it developed into a 75-minute film and a 3-act structure rather than, it was like episodic in the first place.
And Merlin, you've sort of, that thing I said about being a custodian of these characters, that's kind of been your number one job, or maybe your number two job at Aardman these last years. You'd worked on Curse of the Were-Rabbit, but tell us what it means to sort of protect these guys, and then what it meant to jump in on this.
Well, there's a lot of pressure, because when fans love characters as much as they do, they feel an ownership of it, and if you get something wrong, they're very happy to tell you. And so working with Nick and within the Wallace and Gromit world and within Aardman, it is exactly that. We're very, very careful about making sure that the silliness and the humor and the fun of Wallace and Gromit is maintained and preserved. And it always, there's an anticipation when an idea like this kind of keeps on bubbling up, even within the studio, I think it's fair to say there was a lot of excitement when Nick pitched this. And so to be a part of it, I'm truly thankful to Nick for trusting me with directing next to him, but also very relieved to see it on the big screen and for you guys laughing in the right places. Thank you so much.
Speaking of the right places, I mean, a good example is, I think it's just clear that Feathers McGraw is a fan favorite. So to see him back, and to see the way that you introduce him back first for the fans, it's like, what he's handing over at the prison, if you will. The last joke being the rubber glove. It's like, that's kind of, I think, anyone who fell in love with the character back during The Wrong Trousers kind of recognizes him there. Talk maybe a little bit about the way that this movie incorporates the adventures that they've had before while sort of paving a new way. Little details maybe that we might have missed on first viewing. There are certainly some that we picked up on, like the red motorbike with the sidecar is familiar, from past adventures, etc. But the question here is sort of making sure that you're incorporating the love that we've had for these characters in the past into their new adventure.
Yeah, do you want to
quite
kick
a
off,
number of
Nick?
things. I mean, it makes me, when you ask that question, think of the music side really, and Julian's, theme, and actually on this one, Julian decided to partner up with Lorne Balfe, who they met on Curse of the Were-Rabbit on this one, and they've done such an amazing. There's a lot of reference to the other movies. It's like it is a kind of love letter to the fans and to the legacy of Wallace and Gromit. I found it very moving.
Another aspect, I guess, is that in the previous feature you kind of go into a new area. Here you're getting to it's almost like the whole movie's taking place in Wallace and Gromit's backyard, and you're expanding the town. Where is this town? Is it in your imagination, or you've got this crazy border?
It's a good question.
Yeah. Sort of a non-specific place in the north of England somewhere.
We've got into trouble with the town of Wigan. It's a small town in the north of England, near my hometown of Preston. And there is an A to Z, A to Z of a book is it in the wrong?
It's in Were Rabbit.
It's in Curse of the Were Rabbit, and it specifically says A to Z of Wigan. So, and now Wigan Town Council own Wallace and Gromit, or they feel like they do, and we've had to kind of be a bit more vague about where they live.
Here I'm going to sort of ask a question for the producers, because one of the challenges is in expanding this, you have how many sets? 3 dozen, more than that? Like, how do you kind of divide and conquer when you're doing a feature-length Wallace and Gromit film? Just what is the scale of it?
Beaky's the expert at this.
So we have about 40 sets shooting at any one time on the movie, and Nick and Merlin basically split the movie 50-50 between them. But what's really important is that they spend time together at the start of every day, watching rushes, talking about the film, and making sure we're like a cohesive unit as we're filming, because there are so many different parts moving at any one time. It's that communication between Nick and Merlin that we've really got to work to make really smooth.
And you spent 7 years, basically doing the first Wallace and Gromit film yourself, and in a way, now you have to hand over. You've done that, with Merlin on Were Rabbit, and even you, Merlin, here, I assume. Do you ever jump in and
No.
this isn't right, I'm going to do this scene, or how do you?
We were so busy directing all of the studio floor, and we had a fantastic animation team headed up by Will Beecher, director in his own right, and he supervised the animation team for us. But we were every day down on the studio floor directing the animators, but we weren't able to be hands-on animating ourselves, even though Nick and I have both animated in the past.
Yeah, and I tried on Early Man, I tried just being more like the general with supervising directors of animation working below me, but I so missed being on the floor and working with the directors, so we did it equally, really, didn't we?
The way back with Grand Day Out, I understand that you wrote to the plasticine factory and told them that you were doing this, and they said, we're going to give you the material, back up the truck, and here's a ton or so of clay. That is so long ago and such a different kind of method, I guess, from what Aardman does now. Can we kind of understand from having watched these films over the years what the sort of plasticine version was? What are we seeing here? Because there's still fingerprints. It's still being hand manipulated.
It's very important to the heart of what we do, is that you do get the fingerprints, and it is you do appreciate the so many human beings have made this film.
But what is the material? What are the puppets?
So in Vengeance Most Fowl, the really expressive parts of the characters, so the hands and their faces, are all modeling clay, or plasticine. Then we have used, because material technologies have advanced, silicone for the majority of their bodies. But the arms would have been a plasticine sculpt originally, so you can still see the fingerprints mastered into that. Sometimes that doesn't always work, and we do go back to the full plasticine for Gromit or for Wallace's sleeves or his trousers. But practically that takes a very long time. So if it looks good and it works and it still looks like clay, even though it might not be always, it was in its origins, which is why you can see the thumbprints.
Another question for the producers. There was this tragedy that befell Aardman a number of years back, where the warehouse containing many of the elements, especially of Chicken Run, was destroyed in a huge fire. Does that impact sort of when it comes time to bring these characters back? I know probably you're never recycling pieces, but at the same time, there's just a part of their heritage that's kind of lost there, or maybe this becomes a kind of resurrection now when you're able to bring them back. Can you tell us just a little bit about that setback and getting to here?
Yeah, I mean, it was a storage unit, so fortunately it wasn't the main studio that burnt down. And we always have the reference of the films to go back to. And we actually do recycle a lot. I think some of the sets we've used on this film probably used on Close Shave. So it's very much part of what we do. So yeah, it's a real shame when you lose all those assets, but we have an amazing team that can look at what's on the screen and rebuild, and I suppose that's what we do. And as Merlin said, the processes change slightly every time anyway, so whereas we were fully in clay, and also if you look at how the characters have evolved, if you go back to Grand Day Out, the look of Wallace and Gromit is so different to sort of how they appear on the screen now. So we're ever evolving, but reusing as we go, ideally. So yes, it was really unfortunate, but all the crew and people were safe. That was the main thing. Assets we can rebuild, the people you can't.
And we all kind of know the world, we know the feel because we've spent so many years with these characters. But one of the pleasures, I think, is the way that there's kind of references, homages to genres, kind of woven into your work. When you're doing a new movie, it feels like a chance to maybe widen that a little bit while also staying true to, some of those past influences. Would you talk a little bit about sort of what your reference points were in writing the script for this?
Yeah, I mean, those things are right at the center of the DNA of the movie making, really, all those inspirations. But we had Village of the Damned was one of the big ones.
I wondered about that because
Yeah.
you've got the eyes
And
of everybody and very much...
Everybody turning.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Cape Fear right at the beginning.
Yeah.
We really quite like that.
Yeah, bit of Italian job at the end.
Yeah.
On the bridge, yeah.
Bit of Aliens where the Norbots are coming down the...
Alien.
Yeah, Alien.
Aliens with the bleeping, on the monitor.
Right,
The
right.
gnomes, where are they, sort of thing.
Yeah,
And generally just a love for cinema, really. And we think we've sort of come up with a new subgenre called gnome noir. So hopefully it sticks.
no one will ever do it as well as this, but that's kind of how it works, right? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second, but I'll just reset. Well, that's exactly, I think, where I was. I was going to ask you about AI, not about all of the debates. No. That's a too long conversation for here, but there's a way in which this plays into just kind of where the culture's mind is right now on artificial intelligence. And so you said the idea occurred to you, already many years ago, but there's something about it landing right now that just feels kind of timely, prescient.
It's kind of luck, yeah.
Yes.
Or
I mean,
is it?
I know Mark, the writer, picked up on it immediately when I pitched the idea to him, and he was very excited about the whole... I mean, we don't take a kind of very black and white view on it, but he seemed to be asking questions about can we trust the tech that we work with, and maybe, how can we, who's behind the tech, and do we trust who's in control of it?
And I mean, no AI was harmed in the making of this movie, but we didn't use it. We don't, and we wouldn't, I think, is for the creative process. Yeah.
But also, kind of, what do you feel like you're saying a little bit? It's interesting the kind of dynamic, that exists in Wallace and Gromit movies, and what maybe your kind of message is. He's an inventor, but here the inventions always go a bit wrong, don't they? But
I mean, I think we've used it pretty much as the wedge between Wallace and Gromit. So it is a very light touch. I mean, it is in the world at the moment, it's a very serious subject, but for us, we were, like you say, we weren't creating this before it sort of outside of our bubble evolved into the hot topic that it's become. But I think if in our light-hearted entertainment, if we can trigger some more intellectual conversation from our silly adventure with Wallace and Gromit, then that can't be a bad thing.
It was really, as well, just an excuse in the beginning in Wallace's northern accent just to be able to say, AI lad.
Wait, do it again.
AI lad. AI lad.
Right. I guess a last question, because we want to let everybody kind of on with their day, but one of the elemental aspects of animating these characters is their eye blinks. And what I want to know is, Norbert blinks when he's good, but later has the Village of the Damned eyes. I'm just kind of curious, you must have philosophical debates about, what, whether and how he blinks, but also just if you could give us kind of a little glimpse into, to me, so much of the humor is kind of in the timing of eye blinks, and when you realize just how long it takes you to do just a second of screen time, just the magic, I guess, of that detail.
Yes, blinks are very, you're right, we do debate these things a lot, and they tend to be, especially in Feathers McGraw, they're partly what tell you is thinking.
And we do that partly by discussion, but partly by acting it out and see what we do. And so we use because the animation process is so precious to us, it's so time-consuming, so expensive, and so the time we have with the animators is so precious, is that we need to know what that performance is. There's no animating the shot, oh, that doesn't work, let's do it again. We kind of get the one go at animating, and the animator starts at the beginning, and they animate through their shot, and that's pretty much what you get. We do get the chance to do reshoots when Beaky gives us the nod, if something has really badly gone wrong. But I think the key is that Nick and I act it out. So we think, oh yeah, what happens when you do that? How do you... And so it's on that level sometimes. Sometimes it's instinct, and sometimes it really is a discussion. So with Norbot, for example, when we first created him, he was going to have a very expressive face, but he started to feel like a young boy and not a robot. And so we stripped it back. His eyebrows don't emote. His eyes don't even move. I think they did in one shot, and that was the shot we realized that it wasn't the thing to do.
We tested it a few times with different animators.
Yeah, and actually paring him back, so he's just like a ventriloquist dummy. And it reminds you that he's a machine, and that was really important. Yet he still needed to punctuate for humor, so it was finding that balance.
I love that evil grin you gave when he looked your way about kind of like a reshoot. I imagine that must be like just you're adding on weeks to a schedule or something. It has to matter.
Yeah, and you can tell by talking to Nick and Merlin, we always talk about them in edit when they come up, but, we all want the film to be good, so sometimes you just have to take that risk, and I think today the response from everybody showed that we took all the right risks with the right shots and stuff, so it was good.
Yeah, like every second matters in a movie like this. So we're going to wrap up, but I'm curious, is for any mastermind thieves in the audience, they must be looking at the blue diamond there on your, is that the one that we see in the movie? What are you?
Yeah, it is.
Wow, that's got to be more valuable than an actual diamond.
Well, it is one of. I think there are a couple, but yeah, the rigging department put it on a ring for me so I could wear it proudly.